Look, I'm not gonna sit here and try to convince you that iPads suck. I have one, I use one every single day, and honestly, for the price that you're paying, an iPad can do way more than a Kindle ever could. But if you ask me, buying a Kindle is the way to go every single time if you want to read more books. There are 3 reasons why I think a Kindle is better, and the last reason is actually the most underrated one that I think no one is talking about. Let me explain. Now, the number one reason why you should buy a Kindle over an iPad is because iPads have way too many distractions. I cannot begin to tell you the number of times I've gone to use my iPad to do things like reading or journaling, but somehow end up checking my email or watching a YouTube video instead. Because iPads can do so much, they stretch our attention way too thin. Now, to be fair, there are a lot of ways you can fight back against this. On an iPad, for example, you could turn on the guided access mode to lock down one specific app. You can also use focus modes, but all of these features, in my opinion, are just band-aid solutions to a more deeper rooted problem. If you ask me, having an e-reader like a Kindle is the best of both worlds. You get the analog experience of having the e-ink display, which feels like real paper, but you also get just enough tech for that added convenience that also stops short of being a distraction. Now, really quick before jumping into the next reason for buying a Kindle over an iPad, I do want to do a quick shout out for my book, Supercharge Your Reading. I bought my first Kindle back in 2020 and it completely changed my reading habit. I began reading so much more because of it, and I loved it so much that I wrote a mini book that takes only 1 hour to read that tells you exactly how to use your Kindle to read more books and actually remember the things that you're reading. If you're interested in checking it out and supporting my work, a link for the book is down below. Now, the second reason you should buy a Kindle over an iPad is to protect your eyes and have a more comfortable reading experience. Now, even if your eyes don't hurt when you're normally using your iPad, you're definitely going to be straining them a lot more compared to a Kindle when you're reading a book for a prolonged period of time. You see, the way the iPad screen works is you have LED lights shining light directly into your eyes from behind the screen. This allows for a very high resolution screen and a very bright screen, but at the same time, it's putting a lot more strain on your eyes. On a Kindle though, the screen is very different. It's using a technology called e-ink, which is literally little ink caplets on the screen that move around to form the text that you're reading. It feels the closest you possibly can to paper. On top of that, the lighting that you see on a Kindle is actually called front light. This is because the LEDs are placed on the front of the screen and pointing down onto the screen instead of into your eyes. This makes it a lot less straining when reading at night. It's one of those things you'll have to experience in real life if you get the opportunity. It just feels way more comfortable than reading on a phone or an iPad, and the screen looks really crisp because it's designed for reading text and nothing else. Now, I know on an iPad, if you really wanted to, you could fake that e-ink display look by buying a screen protector that makes it look like an e-ink screen, like a matte finish. You could also turn the settings on to make it black and white if you really wanted to, but at the end of the day, nothing will ever compare to having an actual e-reader in your hands that is designed with that e-ink technology built in. Now, the last reason for buying an iPad over a Kindle, and I think the one that's most underrated, is the portability aspect of owning a Kindle. When you buy a Kindle, the way you treat this device is very different than the way you would treat an iPad if you were to buy that. They are two different form factors and two very different devices. When you buy an iPad, you're going to be treating this device with a lot more care. You're probably going to buy a case for it. You might even buy a screen protector. You're not going to just throw this thing around. It does require a lot more care because it's a lot more fragile. When you buy a Kindle, things will be much different. Now, yes, it's still a piece of technology. You want to be careful with it, but nothing like an iPad. For example, a lot of Kindles you buy these days are water resistant. On top of that, Kindles are made with recycled plastic, and the screen is not the same as a fragile glass iPad screen. You can feel a lot more comfortable throwing this thing around, using it in more places, putting it in your backpack, bringing it with you wherever you go, and not having to worry about it. Now, yes, an iPad will feel a lot more premium. You have that glass screen, you have that metal design, but on a Kindle, even though it's not as premium feeling as an iPad, the trade-off and benefit of that is you get a much more durable device that you can use without having to worry about it as much. I've been using Kindles now for so many years, and I've never once had a problem with breaking it or damaging it, and I've traveled all over the world with my Kindles, in my backpack, on a plane, at the office at work, at home on the coffee table. My dog has touched my Kindle. I've never once had a problem. These things are very durable and they don't really break too easily. On top of that, Kindles are much more appropriately sized for reading a book. They aren't too big compared to an iPad, for example, which is a lot bigger, unless you buy the iPad mini, which might be the most comparable option to buying a Kindle. But again, if you ask me, if you're going to be buying an iPad, you might as well spend that money on a full-size sized iPad, you get all the benefits and features out of it. If you're buying an iPad mini just for reading, you might as well buy a Kindle then. If you are interested in buying a Kindle, whether it's your first one or if you're upgrading from an old one, the Kindle Paperwhite is one that I suggest for most people. I have a very in-depth review of that device. Link for that video on the screen right now. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.